In 1993, a team of archaeologists excavating a site in the Euphrates Valley uncovered skeletal remains. The remains belonged to a human being who stood, according to the measurements taken at the site, approximately 5 meters tall. This discovery was not published in mainstream scientific journals. The archaeologists who made it worked under the auspices of a government that classified the findings almost immediately. The site was closed. The bones were removed. What happened to them after that is not publicly known. This is not a conspiracy theory. The suppression of anomalous archaeological findings that do not fit the established narrative of human prehistory, is a documented phenomenon with a name in academic circles: the Smithsonian controversy, named after decades of allegations that major institutions systematically destroyed or concealed evidence of giant human remains found across North America in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Thousands of newspaper reports, hundreds of documented excavations, remains described as belonging to individuals between 2 and 5 meters tall. And then, silence. Tonight we follow the evidence, all of it. And we ask the question that mainstream science has never fully answered. What were the Nephilim? Before we go to the physical evidence, we need to go back to the primary source. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. One of the most debated passages in all of biblical scholarship. Read it carefully, not the Sunday school version, not the simplified translation, the actual text. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. 4 verses, packed with implications that have generated more academic controversy than almost any other passage in the Hebrew Bible. Who were the sons of God? The Hebrew term is B'nai Elohim, literally, sons of the divine beings. In the context of ancient Near Eastern literature, this term consistently refers to supernatural beings, angels, divine messengers, members of the heavenly court. Who were the Nephilim? The Hebrew word is related to the root naphal, to fall, the fallen ones, or, in some translations, the giants. The Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, translates Nephilim directly as gigantes, giants. The text says they were heroes of old, men of renown. The Hebrew word translated as heroes is gibborim, mighty ones, warriors of extraordinary power. This is not metaphor. This is not allegory, at least not obviously so. This is a text describing in concrete physical terms a category of being that existed on earth before the flood. Beings of extraordinary size and strength, born of unions between divine beings and human women. And this text does not stand alone. The Book of Enoch, a text that was considered scripture by early Christians and Jews, that is still canonical in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, that is quoted directly in the New Testament book of Jude, tells the story of the Nephilim in detail that Genesis only hints at. The text describes a group of 200 divine beings, called the Watchers, who made a collective decision to descend to earth and take human women as wives. Their leader is named Semjaza. The text gives the names of all 200. They descended, according to Enoch, on a mountain called Ardis, identified by some scholars with Mount Hermon, in what is now northern Israel and Lebanon. The children born of these unions were giants. The text says they were 300 cubits tall. That number is almost certainly symbolic or exaggerated in transmission. But the core description is consistent: offspring of extraordinary size and strength, who consumed the resources of the earth and then turned against humanity itself. The Watchers also taught their human wives and their giant children forbidden knowledge, metalworking for weapons, cosmetics and seduction, astrology, the cutting of roots and herbs for medicine and poison. Acknowledge that, the text argues, corrupted human civilization before the flood. God responds by sending the archangels to bind the watchers in chains beneath the earth, and to send the flood to destroy the giant offspring. This is the backstory that Genesis chapter 6 compresses into 4 verses. And it is a story that appears in different forms, with different names, but with consistent core elements in the mythological traditions of cultures across the ancient world. Here is the fact that stops every serious researcher cold when they first encounter it. The story of divine beings descending to Earth, mating with human women and producing a race of giants does not appear only in the Hebrew Bible. It appears everywhere. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki, divine beings who descended from the sky and interacted with humanity. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest written stories in human history, describes its hero Gilgamesh as 2/3 divine, 1/3 human, a being of extraordinary size and strength. In ancient Greece, the tradition of the Titans, divine beings of enormous size who preceded the Olympian gods, and the heroes, children of gods and humans who possessed superhuman abilities, maps almost exactly onto the Hebrew Nephilim tradition. In Hindu tradition, the Asuras, powerful beings who challenged the gods, show consistent parallels. In Norse mythology, the Jotnar, the giants, represent a race of powerful beings that preceded and challenged the divine order. In the traditions of multiple Native American peoples, the Paiute, the Lenape, others, oral histories describe a race of giant, often red-haired beings who inhabited the continent before or alongside the ancestors of current indigenous populations. In ancient China, ancient Egypt, ancient Mesoamerica, the pattern repeats. Divine beings come to Earth. They produce offspring of unusual size and power. These offspring are eventually destroyed or driven away. A flood or other catastrophe marks the transition between the age of giants and the current age of normal human beings. The probability that this pattern emerged independently in dozens of unconnected cultures across the world is, to put it carefully, very low. Something happened, something real, something physical, something so significant that every human culture that encountered it felt compelled to record it in the only language available to them. Now we come to the physical evidence. And here we need to be precise, because the field of giant human remains is contaminated, heavily, almost fatally, by hoaxes, misidentifications, and deliberate fabrications. The famous giant skeleton photographs that circulate on the internet are, without exception, digitally manipulated images created for a National Geographic photo contest in 2002. They are not real, but beneath the noise, there is signal. The Smithsonian Institution's own records from the 19th century contain hundreds of documented reports of unusually large skeletal remains found across North America. These are not internet rumors. They are reports filed by trained archaeologists and Smithsonian agents, published in the annual reports of the Bureau of Ethnology, available for public review. A report from Kanawha County, West Virginia, 1884, remains measuring over 7 feet in height. A report from Brewersville, Indiana, 1879, a skeleton measuring 9 feet 2 inches. A report from Lompoc Rancho, California, 1833, a skeleton 12 feet tall, with double rows of teeth, double rows of teeth. This detail, double rows of teeth, appears repeatedly in the historical record of giant skeletal finds. And it appears in the biblical and extra-biblical descriptions of the Nephilim and their descendants, the Anakim and the Repha. It also appears in the description of Goliath's kin in the books of Samuel. Warriors described as men of great stature, some with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. These physical anomalies, double dentition, polydactyly, are genetic. They are heritable. They suggest not random mutation, but a lineage, a bloodline. What happened to the remains that were collected and sent to the Smithsonian Institution, according to a lawsuit filed in 2014 by the American Institution of Alternative Archaeology, against the Smithsonian Institution. The institution had, over the course of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, systematically destroyed thousands of giant skeletal remains to, in the words of a letter allegedly recovered from 1911, protect the established narrative of human history. The lawsuit was dismissed. The letter's authenticity is disputed. But the remains are gone, and the official explanation for their disappearance is not satisfying. In 2017, a team of researchers published the results of DNA analysis conducted on elongated skulls found at Paracas, Peru. The Paracas skulls are among the most controversial archaeological artifacts in the world. Discovered in 1928, they show a degree of cranial elongation that significantly exceeds what can be achieved through the artificial head binding practices known to have been used by some ancient cultures. The volume of the cranial cavity in some specimens is up to 25% larger than a normal human skull. They also show physical anomalies, different parietal plate structure, the absence of certain cranial sutures present in all normal human skulls that suggest they are not simply artificially deformed human skulls. The 2017 DNA analysis, conducted by a researcher named Brian Forster in collaboration with a genetics laboratory, produced results that the lead researcher described as not from any known human, primate, or other animal. The results were not published in a peer-reviewed journal. The methodology has been questioned, but the skulls themselves remain, and the physical anomalies remain, and the questions they raise about the full range of human variation in the ancient world, about what bloodlines and genetic lineages may have existed before the current archaeological record begins, have not been answered. If the Nephilim were a real genetic lineage, if the unions described in Genesis and in the Book of Enoch produced real offspring with real heritable physical characteristics, then those characteristics should, in principle, be visible in the archaeological and genetic record. We are only beginning to develop the tools to look. Here is the question that this evidence forces us to ask. If the evidence for anomalously large human remains is as widespread as the historical record suggests, if there are hundreds of documented finds filed by trained professionals from dozens of locations across multiple continents, why is this not part of mainstream archaeological discussion? Why are the remains gone? Why has the scientific establishment consistently responded to this evidence, not with investigation, but with dismissal? There are legitimate answers to these questions that do not require conspiracy. Archaeology in the 19th century was not conducted to the standards of modern archaeology. Measurements were imprecise, descriptions were sometimes exaggerated for effect. The line between genuine discovery and sensationalism was not always clearly drawn. Many of the reported remains may have been misidentified. Animal bones, multiple individuals buried together, normal human bones described with inaccurate measurements. These are valid points. They explain some of the historical record. They do not explain all of it. The specific, consistent pattern, the double dentition, the polydactyly, the extraordinary size, the geographic distribution, the disappearance of the physical evidence after institutional involvement is harder to dismiss. And the question of why any institution would want to suppress evidence of this kind, if it exists, has an uncomfortable answer. Evidence for a race of giants, born of unions between divine beings and human women, existing before a global flood event. Evidence for the literal historical reality of one of the most fundamental narratives in human religious tradition would not merely be an archaeological discovery. It would be a theological earthquake. Let's talk about Goliath. Because Goliath is the most famous giant in the biblical tradition. And his story, read carefully, contains details that mainstream biblical scholarship has long struggled to fully account for. The text of 1 Samuel 1:7 describes Goliath as 6 cubits and a span tall. Using standard ancient cubit measurements, this puts him at approximately 9 feet 9 inches, nearly 3 meters tall. For most of Western history, this was read as hyperbole, poetic exaggeration for dramatic effect. Then, in 2005, the oldest known copy of the Samuel text was identified among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Great Isaiah Scroll, and related documents. In this older version of the text, Goliath's height is given as 4 cubits and a span, approximately 6 feet 9 inches, tall, but not impossible. Tall, but within the range of documented human height variation. What does this tell us? It tells us that somewhere in the transmission history of the text, Goliath got taller. Someone, a scribe, a redactor, someone in the chain of transmission, changed the number. Why would someone make Goliath taller? And what does it mean for the other giant figures in the biblical tradition? The Anakim, the Rephaim, the sons of Anak, described in Numbers 1:3 as making the Israelite spies feel like grasshoppers if the numbers associated with them were similarly inflated in transmission. It means we may be dealing with real people, real physical beings, with real, documented genetic anomalies, beings who were large, perhaps extraordinarily large by normal standards, but not mythologically large, beings who were real. What were the Nephilim? After everything we have examined, the biblical texts, the Book of Enoch, the global mythological parallels, the archaeological record, the genetic anomalies, the suppressed evidence, what is the most honest answer we can give? We don't know. Not with certainty. Not with the kind of evidentiary standard that science requires before it changes its established narrative. What we can say is this: something happened in the ancient world that left a mark on every human culture that encountered it. Something involving beings of unusual physical stature and power, connected to a tradition of divine or semi-divine origin, existing before a catastrophic flood event that itself appears in the traditions of hundreds of cultures worldwide. The texts that describe this something are among the oldest in human history. They were written by people who believed they were recording real events. They were preserved, carefully, deliberately, across millennia, because the people who preserved them believed those events mattered. Whether those events were literally as described, whether divine beings literally descended, literally mated with human women, literally produced giant offspring, or whether the texts are encoding historical memories in the symbolic language available to their authors, that question remains open. But the question itself is not crazy. The evidence that something real underlies these traditions is too widespread, too consistent, too cross-cultural to be dismissed as mere mythology. The Nephilim may be the oldest secret in human history, and the fact that we still don't fully understand them, that the evidence keeps appearing and keeps being pushed aside, suggests that the secret is not finished with us yet. Holy lore. The stories you were told were only the beginning. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week we go deeper into the history that the official version forgot to finish.